Well, alright, y'all. All across the USC, Compton, Watts, Bay to LA. Pomona, California, from valley to valley, we represent that killer Cali. So if you keeping it real on your side of your town, you tune in to Gangsta Chronicles. Ew.
Gangsta Chronicles, we gon' tell you how it goes.
If I lie, my nose will grow like Pinocchio. We gon' tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. Ew.
Gangsta Chronicles, this is not your average show.
You're now tuned into the real MC8, Big James, and Big Steel.
This is strictly from the streets.
Hello.
We represent the James.
What's happening? We have a bonus episode from my guy Greg Kading. Phil Carson, who was the only FBI agent to ever investigate the Biggie Smalls case, believes the hip-hop star was shot dead by a hitman helped by two crooked LAPD cops. Guess apparently this guy, Phil Carson, he's making these he made some allegations on the podcast, The Dossier, which he said would blow the lid off the unsolved case and expose evidence and force the original FBI investigation to be reopened. We have Greg Kading. He's going to rebut all that.
Yeah, and I would love to. I'd love to have the opportunity to kind of respond to the claims that he's making. They're tired old allegations. This all goes back to the Russell Poole era of the Biggie Smalls murder investigation, and these ideas that these rogue LAPD cops, David Mack in particular, was involved in the murder at the behest of Suge Knight, and then the LAPD covered it up. Well, and it was an interesting theory, and it's a theory we looked into when we investigated this originally. But at the end of the day, it's a theory that is just built on nothing but opinion and speculation. But yet it gains traction when it's not challenged. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm doing right now, is to challenge Phil Carson to any type of debate that he chooses. And I want to challenge everything that he's postulated and said that, in the general public, the audience is hearing his side of the story, and you're only hearing one side of the story, then you tend to believe that it could potentially be true. And so I would like to challenge those assertions that he's making and to deal with him directly. And if not, then I'll do it indirectly. I'll sit here and refute everything that he's said on your show.
Yeah, and the truth is now coming out, man. That's the way they're fixing it, right? That the whole LAPD, orchestrated this whole elaborate cover-up to just go out and murder Notorious B.I.G. First of all, what's the motive? What would be the motive behind the LAPD just getting behind to go murder a hip-hop star? I don't understand it.
Right. So he's going to claim that it's financially motivated, that David Mack did it because Suge Knight offered him money. But it goes way beyond the LAPD. If you follow his theory that he's postulating, you're talking about people from the FBI, people from the U.S. Attorney's Office, people from the District Attorney's Office, the LAPD, gangsters, all of these people, informants, everybody collaborating together. And if you do the work and actually figure out how big of a conspiracy this would demand, it becomes absolutely fucking ridiculous. Like, all these people aren't going to work together for what? Mm-hmm. To risk their reputations, their professional lives, all of this, in order to cover up a murder or a rapper? Give me a break. It's ridiculous. And you can, but if people don't know better, if they're not armed with the counter equation, then they assume it.
Well, Big Gene Deal, Biggie's bodyguard, man, he said he identified who he thought the suspect was. And Carson is like, he's going in with that. He's saying that this guy pretty much has already told everybody who the killer was and everything. I don't know, man. What do you think about? Do you think Gene knows who did it? Who done it?
Gene don't have a fucking clue, at all. He was in the car ahead, and he looked behind him. The shooting already took place. He didn't see the shooter. He didn't have a clue who did it. But because he had already had some kind of little eye fucking contest with some guy in the parking lot, he assumes, well, I got a bad vibe from this guy, and he looked at me in a certain way, and so therefore that must have been connected to the murder. Right? Mm-hmm. And then he identifies early on, shortly after the murder, he identifies some guy from a six-pack who has nothing to do with anything. It was just a filler picture in a six-pack. And Gene says, well, that looks like the guy. Well, guess what? It looks nothing like Amir Muhammad, who he then later claims was the shooter. So if you're a witness and you say, well, this is what the guy looks like, and then later on you pick out a picture of a guy who looks absolutely completely different, then what did you really see and what do you really know? Because there's no consistency in what you claim to have seen.
You know, and the thing that the Carson guy said, man, he said he saw pictures of the two alleged crooked cops at the Peterson Museum in L.A. the night it happened. But he said as soon as he started to solve the case, that people pretty much went out their way to discredit him. He said that there's this big scandal going on. People are trying to discredit him. What do you think about all this, man?
Well, he deserves to be discredited because what he's promoting is bullshit. You know, and it's not doing any good to anybody that actually cares about the truth of this matter. And so he claims, what I believe he's claiming, is that there were some surveillance photographs of an individual that he says that he'd seen. And then when he went back to meet with the LAPD and look at the files, that picture is no longer there. Well, every single picture from the Peterson Auto Museum surveillance cameras are in the case files. I have every single one of them. And so even if we removed him, those videotapes were still at the Peterson Auto Museum for anybody to go and subpoena. You know, we didn't have the originals, we had copies. And so what good does it do us to remove a photograph that we know somebody else can go get otherwise?
Yeah, well, you know what he said is that attorneys for the city of L.A., you know, they were being sued by Biggie's mom at the time, you know, Miss Wallace, rest in peace. They told him he could not testify in the cases that might cause them to lose. He even heard tape recordings where a senior LAPD official told the LA Times reporter to discredit him. He don't know what he's talking about, and he could derail the investigation.
Well, he had a beef with Chuck Phillips, right? So that's the LA Times reporter he's talking about. Because Chuck Phillips had an in at the LAPD and was getting information about what was happening in the investigation. And that rubbed them the wrong way. They didn't think this stuff, and it shouldn't be out there, but it was. So it is what it is. But, you know, the idea that this whole thing was a big, massive cover-up and conspiracy, all you have to do is sit there and think about what it would take to do this, and then it becomes so implausible. It just falls on its face.
Now, what do you think this guy's motivation is? Because, like, you know, how many years has it been? Since all you doing is opening up rehashing old wounds for these family members that don't have to live through this stuff, and now you bringing some other stuff up. What do you think, like, everybody's motivation is in this?
Well, that's a great point. So here's a guy that claims that there was this big cover-up, including his own agency, right? Because in order for this to work, his own agency had to collaborate with the LAPD. And he's claiming that this was all, you know, a massive effort. Well, what does it say about him that he believes that and then continues to work for them for 15 years before he tells his story? Right?
Oh, so you just think, like, right now, man.
But think about that.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of integrity do you have to where you believe this is a truth, but yet you just settle into it for 15 years before then you come out and go, hey, by the way, 15 years ago I was really uncomfortable with this situation. There was a cover-up, and I'm good working for them for the, you know, for the duration. Come on.
What would you have to say to these, like, if you was in here, and so you said you're willing to debate these guys openly about this, right?
Anytime, anywhere.
Well, you know, I know Gene Deal. I know him. We can set that up anytime. We can get Mr. Carson. He's more than welcome to come on, man. We can set up a Zoom call, and he bring his facts, and I know you have the real facts, true facts. I think a lot of times, man, we got a lot of hocus pocus journalism going on now, man, and people just rehashing certain shit because it's gonna get some numbers or whatever, get some attention. No disrespect to nobody. If you believe in what you're saying is true, come talk to Greg about it.
Absolutely, and nothing against the Dossier Files and their podcast.
Oh, not at all.
But the thing that they don't know what to challenge them on. You know, they're not being objective observers. They're just like, okay, here's your platform, tell your story. But, you know, the truth is an unchallenged lie, right?
Exactly.
And so you got to challenge these things. If people are interested in what happened, then you got to. Everyone has to stand and face each other and go, well, here's what I know, and here's what you claim to know, and you know, work it out. So that's what I'm hoping to do. because it's important enough to work towards that.
So, if Gene Deal was here right now, what would you say to him?
Give me an opportunity to speak, because what's going to happen with Gene is he's just going to try to railroad you and bully you, and you're not going to have an actual debate, an intelligent, respectful debate. I'm going to say things, and then Gene's just going to, because this is his style. He's just going to overwhelm you with attitude. Mm-hmm. And so I'm going to say, if there's a debate, it has to be moderated, it has to be done professionally, and it has to be done. It has to be done in a way where people have an opportunity to talk, and to share the information that they have to offer.
And how about if Mr. Carson was sitting here right now, what would you say to him?
I'm embarrassed for you. That's what I would say to him. I'm embarrassed for you, and you're an embarrassment to your agency, because you should know better. I believe you believe what you're saying, but you don't have the due diligence done to go out and publicly say this. You're accusing demonstrably innocent people of horrific crimes. And that's reckless, and it's irresponsible, and it's unfair. For what? For what kind of...
It's not good. It's definitely not cool. And I just think about this man's kids, man. A lot of people still hurt by that. You know what I mean? I don't think you ever truly get over death. You just learn how to cope with it. And you have people bringing up this stuff, especially stuff like this bullshit, pretty much. Every few, it seems like every few months now, somebody's coming with some new theories. Nothing. It is what it is. It ain't no theory. Everybody kind of knows who shot Biggie Smalls.
Right.
Everybody kind of knows that it ain't for me to say right now, but I think everybody knows. You know what I mean? And I think it's something that, in this context anyway, needs to be just kind of left alone.
Everybody knows that was in a position to know. Like, if you're from the streets, you figure this stuff out, because you know how the gangsters work, you know how that culture works. But everybody doesn't know, and that there's a large majority of people out there who aren't familiar with those kind of dynamics. And so you guys know Sharitha Knight. Mm-hmm. You guys know Reggie Wright Jr. Mm-hmm. Well, if you accept this theory, those guys are murderers.
Yeah, and that's not cool, because one thing about it, Reggie Wright didn't have nothing to do with that. Reggie Wright Jr. had nothing to do with that. Sharitha Knight had nothing to do with that. Everybody knows who did this.
And the other 40, 50 people that are necessary for this conspiracy to take place. And that's what the general public doesn't do, the critical thinking to recognize how difficult this is on that level of a scale, where cops and DAs and U.S. attorneys and FBI agents and everybody's collaborating together to pull this off.
And this guy's just thought of this whole monolithic conspiracy that the FBI is this cover-up going on over here. It's like, that's something like Osama bin Laden. Like, we went over and got Osama bin Laden. That's some shit like that. So no disrespect to Biggie. Biggie was a rapper. Mm-hmm. He was a rapper. He wasn't no threat to national security. He didn't have, it wouldn't have been no reason. It just didn't make a lot of sense. And so they keep coming up with these grand conspiracies, man. It's almost like laughable. You know what I mean?
It is, but it's also hurtful, because
it's very hurtful.
If you're on the receiving end of those false allegations, that affects your life, your reputation, and how people look at you.
Yeah, it is. And the thing is, man, Reggie caught a lot of beef, man, because there's people out there that love these rappers. These rappers are forever immortalized in some of these people's minds, man, and they love them a great deal. So they sending Reggie emails, talking just, pretty much hitting them with everything they could but the kitchen sink. And it's not cool, because Reggie's minding his own business. These dudes need to kind of mind their own. It's not cool, especially to accuse somebody of this, something like this right here, because the thing is, murder don't have a statute of limitations. So pretty much what you're doing, you're playing with people's livelihoods and freedom. People need to just move on from this, man, because it's really destroying a bunch of lives at the end of the day.
And it's causing further confusion for Voletta Wallace, who is like the last standing victim in all of this. Mm-hmm. Faith aside, Voletta Wallace should have had clarity in what happened to her son.
Yeah, exactly.
And so much noise got in the way, so much confusion got in the way, that it led her to a place where she's never going to have definitive answers. She's never going to have that peace of mind of knowing exactly what happened, because there's too much bullshit in the way. And, you've got to just... you've got to be able to look at the things for what they were instead of what you want them to be or what your preconceived notions are about how it went down. You've got to look at the facts and the evidence only, and then let that determine what your what your conclusions are.
Well, man, you guys heard it, man. Gene, you have my phone number. Feel free to hit me, man, if you want to rebuttal this and everything. Mr. Carson, like I said, you're more than welcome to come on, but I think that what you're selling is a bunch of bullshit, and I think you need to leave it alone, man.
From the streets to the yard, to the boulevard, Gangsta Chronicle. Well, all right, y'all. All across the USC, Compton, Watts, Bay to LA, Pomona, California, from valley to valley, we represent that killer Cali. So if you keeping it real on your side of your town, you tune in to Gangsta Chronicles.
Gangsta Chronicles, we gon' tell you how it goes.
If I lie, my nose will grow like Pinocchio. We gon' tell you the truth and nothing but the truth.
Gangsta Chronicles, this is not your average show.
You're now tuned into the real MC8, Big James, and Big Steel.
This is strictly from the streets.
Hello.
We represent the G's.
You know we represent the G's, never no wannabes.
Gangsters, hustlers, players on the go. Tune in like every week.
If you wanna hear the real, well, you done come to the right spot. Gangsta Chronicle.